A summary of the overall book essentially discusses the power that teachers holds to be motivational in the classroom. Teachers are really essential to the overall classroom function and the classroom culture. It discusses how the classroom management and how that first day really is detrimental to the overall school year and the impact that the teacher will have on the student. So if the teacher builds good rapport with the student is more likely to succeed. It kind of alludes to the entire notion of self-fulfilling prophecy. If you have faith in me, I'm more likely to have more potential and act on that potential. It also discusses other topics such as being creative as an educator. Don't always take the easy way out, and don't always take the easy task. Take the road less traveled. So essentially, it implores teachers to think outside of the box, which typically is difficult, especially as an educator. And the great thing about the book is it provides you with the great tools and conventional ways to do so. So for most students, they struggle with math, and especially the younger age groups. So a great thing to do, for example, that the book kind of supports us to do is maybe instead of, just verbally conveying a math lesson, tying in a fun song or a fun activity that now students associate it with something positive instead of something negative and receive, a certain level of transfer knowledge. So it really just gives really good explicit ideas and teaches teachers that there's always a different route. There's always a different option, and there's a way to reach all different types of learners, whether they're auditory, visual, kinesthetic. It's really a great book. And it always talks about, self-reflection as a teacher. What could I have done better in this situation? What I need to do better moving forward? And how can I use my past experiences, whether it is in my own education, in my own high school experiences, and the tools that I'm good at and that I succeed in to better educate my students and to better deliver, a multitude of different types of content. So it was really interesting in that perspective. So the next thing that I'm going to discuss is it's just going to kind of go over the key points. So, it's an extensive take on modern education. So it really implores teachers to be constructivists and use techniques such as cooperative learning and group learning and a high level of engagement, maybe integrating technology, doing whatever you have to do to accommodate your students and really understand their needs. And to me, it could help, educators that are already in the system because it could help them improve their current instructional methods. And then it could help educators such as myself that are entering, the education world and really teach us different techniques, different methods to deal with this new generation that we're going to be educating. Some key takeaways is, so this is essentially the 7 steps that was mentioned in the title of the book, and it addresses that whole metaphor of the wild card and the deck of cards. So the first bullet point is why the deck is not stacked against you, no matter what kind of hand you've been dealt. So what I interpret this as is, regardless of, the situation with your students, whether you have students that aren't eager to learn or, students that are behavioral or whatever the situation may be, maybe you're in a low-income district, you have the power to, solicit or facilitate change in that class. So you ultimately have the power to dictate how that school year is going to go and how they will succeed academically. And I think this is imperative because, you see, especially as educators near the end of their career, they start to lose faith and they start to become disengaged themselves. So this is kind of a motivational tool to be reminded that, like, you have the power to ignite change regardless of the situation, regardless of the class that you're given, regardless of even administration. So the next point is why you should never listen to the joker. So the joker, in my opinion, is those gossipy, negative teachers that are in the teachers' lounges, like saying that they're just there to collect paychecks and talking poorly about students or negative about the learning environment. You always have to, stay away from it. It's toxic, and it could be really toxic to your career and even just day-to-day function. So that's my interpretation of it. And how to identify the ace up your sleeve and use it to create classroom magic. So my interpretation is what I was saying in the last slide, how we discussed past experiences in order to kind of spark creativity. Some of us we don't label ourselves as necessarily the most creative people, but that doesn't mean that we can't, kind of self-reflect and derive creative ideas. So it kind of just implores you to do so and to think differently, and then how to apply rules of rigor in order to fuse creativity with learning. So essentially my interpretation of that is how do we make creativity and learning hand in hand, which sometimes people find that it juxtaposes one another, but like the example I said before, maybe you incorporate a fun song into a math lesson that kind of is like an overall summary of the content that went on, or the state standards that were addressed. Or maybe instead of doing a boring writing lesson, you attribute it to something in the real life. So you have your students discussing a political issue, or you take them out into the field somewhere, like you take them to a local government office, and then you have them write a letter to the local government official that they wrote. So just like thinking outside the box, making things relatable, fun, and engaged, and then how to become the wild card that changes the game for your students. So how to be that person that impacts change and makes them see education in a different way. So my overall opinion of the book is, it really was a wonderful read, especially for future educators such as myself. I feel that in my current situation, I'm a TA at Stratford Road Elementary School, and a lot of people shy away from doing, the new creative methods because it's something that's not typically exercised. No one's sure if it's effective. But what I've gathered after this book is it's imperative to take the risk. The risk is well worth the reward, and I've seen it in my classroom, even though it's a high needs ABA classroom. I'll just give an example. I have a student that is highly intelligent. She's just extremely low functioning when it comes to certain skills. So they've now kind of integrated this independent work where she could kind of feel self-empowered and she doesn't constantly have an aide on top of her. And all we do is kind of give the command, do your work. She goes over to her work table, and she's supposed to know how to do some of the trials independently without any, verbal commands. So only a few gestural cues, only minimal intervention from the teacher. Although this is a huge risk on the teacher's end because, we don't necessarily know, what of the content will stick or what situation it will result in, if the student will have a behavior. This is just it's something to lighten up the student's day. It's something to make the student feel empowered. It's something to make the teacher feel like they're preparing them for the real world where they could do more independent tasks. So this book has really taught me a lot. It's really taught me that taking action like that, being the go-getter and being great instead of average is something that's dire to the educator population now, and it's dire to the student population as well. Thank you for listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed.